If you're following along, we read through Judges and we hit on Samson, but I wanted to share something with you that I read it, and it's in Judges 13, and it's about Samson. It says, "So the woman gave birth to a son and named him Samson. And the boy grew, and the Lord blessed him, and the Spirit of the Lord began to stir him at times in Menhaden between Zorah and Eshtaol." And the funny thing is when I saw that, I mean, usually people would just gloss over it, but I was like, there's got to be a deeper meaning in there. So I looked up what Zorah and Eshtaol means, and Zorah means wasps, and Eshtaol means strong woman. So I looked up also the biblical representation of wasp, and it means demonic higher powers. Just like when the Bible mentions things like Jesus said you'll tread on scorpions and serpents, he wasn't talking about stinging critters and biting, snakes. But he was talking, as a matter of fact, right after that he says, don't be surprised that you have power over demonic spirits, but because he's talking about demonic spirits. So the wasps are like a representation of demonic higher powers. And that is exactly where Samson found himself, between a strong woman and between demonic forces. Now, a lot of times the physical manifestation of that isn't, you're not seeing demons, but it's people being worked through, right? And that's what came against Samson. He had the Philistines that wanted to kill him and destroy him, right? And a strong woman who was basically enticing him. And that's where Samson found himself. And the thing is those demonic forces would have had no authority over him. I mean, he overcame them so many times, but unless he gave them an avenue to come against him in, right? And it's because he had such a proclivity to the flesh. And everywhere you'll see Samson, if he wasn't supposed to do something, he was doing it, right? He wasn't supposed to go near dead bodies, but yet he eats honeycomb out of a dead carcass of a lion, right? He did all these things that were contrary to what God was telling him to do, because he just had a proclivity to do whatever he wanted to do, to go after his flesh. And in the end, he ends up getting it right. And it's a great story of God's forgiveness. And I used to hate the story because I thought it was just so tragic, right? But until I watched the play in Branson, and it made me like it a little more, because it shows God's forgiveness. And even at his very end, God still forgave him and still gave him the ability to overcome. But I also look at it this way, and this is the way I've always saw it, is but at what cost, right? At what cost? It cost him his eyesight. It cost him, he was humbled. They made fun of him. They spit on him. They poked out his eyes, and he was grinding at the meal. That's all the stuff they did to Samson because of his proclivity for the flesh. And so that's what we have to realize, that the things that we see, the things that are going on, the temptations that we face, they're not necessarily just some desire that we have, but there are demonic forces seeking to steal, kill, and to destroy you. But they have no occasion against you unless you totally go against God's will and step outside of his hedge. So anyway, just wanted to share that with you guys. I thought it was kind of a cool thing. But anyway,